Sanders, in fact, has the least baggage of any Democrat in this race. At this point, he's the most credible change candidate in the Democratic Party. And in 2020, that could make him the most formidable challenger. Republicans are starting to think that victory is assured, and that's a mistake.
Bernie Sanders is now the odds-on favorite. Bernie is going to run the table.
We only have about a minute and a half.
So what's going on there? Self-described socialist Bernie Sanders is winning praise from both the president and the president's favored cable channel because, as they see it, as this theory goes, he's the beatable candidate among the viable candidates. But with 6 days to go until Iowa, some are sounding the alarm. The headline of Jonathan Chait's piece in New York Magazine reads, "Running Bernie Sanders against Trump would be an act of insanity." Over at The Atlantic, Trump critic David Frum puts it more directly. Bernie can't win. Neither man has exactly been bathing in the warmth of Bernie Nation these past couple of hours. With us tonight from Iowa, two of our very best. Shaquille Brewster is an NBC News political reporter. And Katy Tur returns to our late-night airwaves. She is, of course, a decorated veteran of the 16 campaign who lived to tell about it, lived to write about it, and is the host of her own show each afternoon here on this network. Shaq, we'll begin with you. What do you think is going on here? And does Team Bernie have self-awareness that all this talk is going on surrounding them?
I think they do. And, you know, what you're really seeing from the Sanders campaign and from his supporters are they're trying to just brush this aside. They feel like they're in this moment, a unique moment for this campaign. When you look at the polling, they feel they're surging, they're rising, they feel good about the position that they're in. But they also acknowledge that they know they are making some people nervous. And that was the tone that you heard from Senator Sanders the last time he was in this state. Remember, he's been in Washington, D.C. the past 2 days sitting in on that impeachment trial. But when we heard from him at a big rally in Sioux City on Sunday night, he said, hey, all of a sudden, President Trump is tweeting about me. You have the Republican establishment sending out press releases about me, and you even have some in the Democratic establishment getting nervous. He celebrated that, and he lived in that moment, and that's what you're hearing from the Sanders campaign and the aides on the ground. They feel the energy right now. They feel like they really are surging, and they like the attention that they're getting because it shows that people are watching as opposed to not watching, which that's how they felt a couple days ago. Or a couple of weeks ago, excuse me, Brian.
Katy Tur, in the 16 campaign that you covered, we kept hearing Trump praising Bernie, and we chalked it up to the enemy of my enemy is my friend. But what are they saying this time around? And do they buy into any of this reverse Fox News, oh, he's the guy we fear the most psychology?
Well, let me say this. I was just having a conversation with somebody who is quite close to the president and involved in the campaign, and they were having a debate about who they thought was harder to run against. Was it Joe Biden or was it Bernie Sanders? They said both had their pros and cons. But on the subject of Sanders, this person admitted that Sanders has very loyal support. He has very dedicated support. He has the kind of support that Donald Trump has. They admitted that there's some crossover support there from 2016. They believe, though, that that crossover support is not as strong as it was back then. So there is some awareness that Bernie Sanders has some momentum. I'd also point out that on Fox News last year, Bernie Sanders had an extraordinarily popular town hall where he surprised many of the Fox News hosts with his healthcare answers and what the crowd at the town hall answered in response to healthcare questions. 2.5 million people watched that town hall. So Bernie Sanders is something of an unknown quantity to how he would actually stand up to Donald Trump, given what happened in 2016. But again, they are still worried about Biden, and you can see that from the way the president continues to attack him.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.